In this video, I'll show you how to turn an ordinary sketch into a beautiful vector in Affinity. Let's get started. If you'd like to follow along with me, I've left a download link to the photo that I'll be using in the video description. So, Affinity recently added a feature called Image Trace, which allows you to turn images into vectors. While this is a really cool feature, it doesn't work very well with sketches. It tends to add way too many nodes, making it difficult to edit those nodes. So I still prefer to use the pen tool to create really clean lines on my sketches. But if you want to learn more about the image trace feature, I have a video all about that, which I'll leave in the video description. To get started for this video, let's select the pen tool. The pen tool can be a little tricky, but don't worry, I'll keep it simple for this video. Before we begin tracing, let's make sure we have the same settings in the context toolbar. First, make sure you're working in this first pen mode. Then, click on the gear icon, and make sure rubber band mode is turned on. And last, I like to turn off snapping whenever I'm working with the pen tool, so that the snapping lines don't interfere with my tracing. With that done, we can begin tracing. I'll zoom in, and I'll start right here. I'll click and drag to lay down my first point. And then you can see this blue line giving us a preview of how the line will look if we lay down our next point. So you can see the line would be perfect if I clicked right here, but I like to bring it slightly past that. Then I'll click and drag to make the line perfectly fit. So go slightly past, click and drag, and you can see we're creating a nice smooth curve here. So I'm going to continue to do that, clicking and dragging to lay down this beautifully curved line. Now, wherever there's a bit of a sharper change in direction like this, make sure you click and drag just a little bit. This will give you more flexibility on this curve. Then you can continue as normal, clicking and dragging. When you get to this point right before the beak, go ahead and click and drag. This will be your last point. Then press Escape. Now that we're done tracing, we can go back to the toolbar, and we can click on the little arrow next to the pen tool to select the Node tool. The Node tool allows us to select the different nodes, and then adjust these little handles to adjust how the line looks. So go ahead and go through your tracing and make any adjustments. I know my sketch wasn't perfect, so right here where it gets a little wiggly, I'm just going to let this be a straighter line. I think that looks good. Okay, with that all cleaned up, let's finish this line by making the line thicker. We can do that in the context toolbar right here. Just click and drag on this to make it thicker. It's a little hard to see with the sketch, so I'll turn that off. And you can see how thick this line is going to be. Feel free to adjust this however you think looks good. And then we can turn the sketch back on. All right, let's continue to trace the rest of our lines. I'll once again grab the pen tool. And if you see this rubber band line, just press Escape one more time to make sure that it's disconnected from this. That way we can start a new line down here on the feet. So I'm going to click and drag to lay down my first point right here. And then I'm going to trace, clicking and dragging gently around this curve. And then we have a sharp corner right here. To create a corner like this, go ahead and click and drag directly on that corner. And while you're clicking and dragging, hold down Alt or Option to break this node and change directions. Then lift up your cursor, lift up Alt or Option, and you've just created a beautifully curved line that changes direction. Let's do that one more time with this corner. I'll click and drag right here. I'll click and drag once again. While I'm clicking and dragging, I'll hold Alt or Option to break this corner. I'll lift up on my cursor. Then I'll lift up on Alt or Option, and we can continue tracing. All right, I just finished that foot, so I'll press Escape, and we can trace the other one. So I'll click and drag for my first point, click and drag all the way around, and once again we get to practice our shortcut. I'll click and drag, Alt or Option to change directions, lift up on the cursor and Alt or Option, and we can continue. I'll press Escape, and now we just have a few more lines to trace. I'm going to trace this wing. I'll press Escape. Now for the face, I'm going to trace the beak. I'll click and drag to begin this. Then we have a sharp change in direction, so I'll click and drag, Alt or Option to switch directions, and then I'll continue. I'll press Escape. Now I'll trace this lower beak area. I'll click here, click and drag, then I'll press Escape. And last, we just need to trace this eye. Click and drag, press Escape. Okay, we have everything traced out now. This looks so good. To finish this video, I'm going to go to our Layers panel so that I can turn off the sketch layer. And now that that layer is off, you can see that because we've traced this as a vector, we should be able to zoom in forever, and the lines will stay smooth and perfect. If your lines look like mine and you can see pixels, that might be because the view up here is set to the pixel view. You can click right here to change it to the vector view, and then you can see that you can zoom in forever, and your line stays smooth. Okay, with that finished, now we can add some color to our design. First, I'm going to add a background color by using the rectangle tool. I'll just click and drag out a rectangle, and I'll drag this to the bottom of everything, and we can make this any color that we want. Now we can add a few more colors to the design. So I'll select the body, and you can see right up here in the color panel, we have a black stroke and no fill. So we can give this a fill color now to add a little bit of color here. I'll repeat this with the feet. I'll hold Shift to select both of the feet, and now we can give them a color. And you can see that right now the feet are sitting on top of the body line, so it's kind of interrupting this line right here. We can fix that by clicking and dragging on these layers to place them underneath the body layer. I like this color for the feet, and I want the beak to be the same color. So I'm going to select this beak right here, and then in the color panel, I can click on this square to add that orange color. Then I'll click on the lower beak, and I'll add that orange color. But you can see this isn't really perfect. We're missing a big chunk of color, and this is overlapping with the beak in a strange way. First, I'll click and drag on the lower beak to place it underneath that top beak layer. That already looks better. And then I'll grab the pen tool to fill in this space. I'm just going to click and drag roughly in that area. Then I'll remove the stroke color, and I'll give it that orange fill color. Then I'll move it underneath all of the beak layers, And you can see that looks a lot better. All right, to finish, we can add some extra detail to this design by adding a little bit of shading. To add this shading, I'm going to do a very similar thing to what I just did with the beak. I'm just going to begin tracing along the body of the duck. Then around here, I'll sharply change direction by clicking and dragging, holding Alt or Option, and moving it in this direction. Then I'll just click and drag, and I'll finish this by clicking on the last point. So this is where I want the shading to go, but I don't like how it looks with the stroke. So I'll remove the stroke. Then I'll click on the fill color, and I'll make it the same color as the duck, but darker. Then, to make sure it's not covering the body lines, I'm going to click and drag this on top of the body layer to make it a child layer. All right, that shading looks pretty good. I think I just want to add a little bit of shading to the legs. So I'm going to repeat this process, tracing around the legs. It looks like the orange color isn't here anymore, so I'll just sample it and then make it darker. Now, right now, this is a child layer to the duck's body, but we want this to be a child layer to the leg, so I'll just move that layer. I'll also remove the stroke, and I think that looks pretty good, but feel free to move any of your nodes around with the node tool at any time. I'll just repeat this for the other leg. And I'll be honest, I don't love the colors I chose, so I'm just going to quickly edit these colors. All right, with that, we're finished vectorizing this sketch. I think this turned out so good. If you enjoyed this video, I'll leave a link in the video description to my free Affinity course. In the course, you'll learn 10 simple steps to make any photo amazing. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next Affinity Revolution tutorial.